something about the upcoming Genshin Impact character Linnea feels different. At first glance, she looks like a fairly standard fantasy archetype: pink hair, fairy-like design, and a connection to nature. But the more I looked into the lore around her, the stranger things started to get. Because according to the official information, Linnea isn't just a fae, she's something called a changeling. And that single word might actually reveal one of the most interesting identity conflicts we've seen in Genshin in a long time. So today, I want to go through everything we currently know about Linnea, the mysterious pink fae from Snezhnaya, and why her story might be setting up something much bigger than just a new character release. Because once you start connecting the pieces, changelings, ancient fae races, forgotten cities like Hyperborea, and even old legends about a boy named Ajax, Linnea starts to look less like a simple adventurer and more like someone caught between entirely different worlds. And the strangest part is that Linnea herself seems to know it. First, let's start with the basics. Linnea is described as a fae who grew up living among humans. But unlike some of the other fantasy races we've seen in Teyvat, the fae of Snezhnaya are not just one species. According to in-game lore, the tundra of Snezhnaya actually contains multiple types of fae. Some of the known groups include the Valkadlak clans, water imps, and the Vila. And apparently the history of these groups is complicated. The lore mentions something called the Golden City of Hyperborea, an ancient civilization that experimented with genetic modification, not only altering other races, but even modifying themselves. That means the fae in Snezhnaya today might not be entirely natural species at all. Some of them could literally be the result of ancient bioengineering. Now keep that detail in mind, because it becomes really important when we talk about Linnea's identity. Officially, Linnea is connected to the concept of a changeling. If you're familiar with Celtic mythology, you might already know what that means. In traditional folklore, changelings were said to be fae children secretly swapped with human babies. The fae would leave their own child behind while taking the human one away. In those old stories, changelings often struggled to fit into human society. They were different, misunderstood, and sometimes didn't even know where they truly belonged. And when you look at Linnea's description, it sounds very similar. She's described as a child who lived among humans from a young age. Someone who couldn't, or wouldn't, fully choose between being part of the fae world or the human one. The lore even hints that her journey through life is driven by one big unanswered question about identity. And if that sounds like a personal conflict, it actually shows up in several other Snezhnayan stories too. One of the most interesting examples appears in the Battle Pass weapon story for Ballad of the Fjords. That story talks about the young hero Ajax. Yes, the same Ajax who would later become the Harbinger we know as Tartaglia. According to the legend, Ajax once fell in love with a snow maiden, but their relationship ended in tragedy because of the tricks of a changeling. That detail might seem small, but it's fascinating, because it means changelings aren't just a random concept added to Linnea's background. They've been quietly present in Snezhnayan folklore inside the game for a long time. Another example shows up in a world quest, where a character named Kasha hears several legendary stories from someone outside her homeland. One of those stories describes a changeling who longed to become human. And when I read that line, I couldn't help wondering something. What if that story isn't just a random folktale? What if it's hinting at the kind of internal conflict someone like Linnea might be dealing with? Because the more we learn about her personality, the clearer it becomes that Linnea is obsessed with one idea in particular: possibility. There's a surprisingly philosophical side to her character. The lore describes how most people eventually grow up and accept the roles the world assigns them. As children, we imagine endless futures, but eventually those possibilities shrink into one path, the one society expects us to follow. Linnea doesn't want that. Her story suggests that she refuses to let fate define her identity. Instead of choosing a single path, she keeps moving forward, exploring the world as much as possible. The idea is that if she keeps exploring long enough, she might experience every possible version of her life before fate has the chance to trap her in just one. And honestly, that might be one of the most relatable motivations we've seen in a character. But Linnea's curiosity doesn't stop at philosophy. She's also described as a biological advisor for the Adventurers Guild, with a deep interest in life itself. At one point, she even tells a child that humans can go extinct, just like animals. Which is a pretty intense thing to hear in a world where most people assume humanity will always exist. So Linnea studies ecosystems, creatures, and the countless forms life can take. She's fascinated by things that don't fit into neat categories. Things that exist outside established definitions. Which again, sounds suspiciously like her own situation. But then we get to one of the strangest details about her character. Linnea is apparently terrified of machines. Inefa, who is an autonomous mechanical life form, actually tried to talk to Linnea about biology and artificial life. And every single time, Linnea immediately turned around and ran away. No explanation. No conversation, she just left. At first, that might sound like a cute personality quirk. But when you combine it with the earlier lore about Hyperborea and genetic experimentation, it starts to feel more meaningful. Because think about the parallels. The Fae of Snezhnaya may have been created or modified through ancient biological engineering. Machines, on the other hand, are artificial life created through mechanical design. Both represent different ways of creating life outside the natural order. So what if Linnea's discomfort with machines isn't random? What if it's connected to the possibility that her own species might not be entirely natural either? Maybe seeing mechanical life reminds her of something she doesn't want to confront. Or maybe it simply raises uncomfortable questions about what actually counts as real life. Interestingly, one of Linnea's acquaintances named Aino once tried to build robots as gifts for her. According to Aino, Linnea always politely refused them, saying that the thought itself was enough. But Aino still believes she'll eventually build a robot that Linnea actually likes. And that little detail makes me wonder if Linnea's relationship with machines could slowly evolve over time. Because if her story really is about exploring infinite possibilities, then learning to accept something completely outside her comfort zone would fit that theme perfectly. Now, of course, the big question many players have is how all of this might translate into gameplay. Right now, we don't have confirmed details about Linnea's kit, but the themes around her character suggest a few interesting possibilities. A character obsessed with ecosystems and biological diversity could easily end up having mechanics that interact with different enemy types or environmental effects. Another possibility is that her kit might revolve around adaptability. If her entire philosophy is about exploring different paths and possibilities, maybe she'll have flexible mechanics that allow multiple playstyles or team roles. And honestly, that would fit perfectly with the idea of a character who refuses to be locked into a single definition. But even beyond gameplay, I think the bigger story implications are what make Linnea so interesting. Snezhnaya has always been portrayed as a harsh, mysterious nation full of secrets. Between the Fatui, the Cryo-Archon, and all the hidden lore about ancient civilizations like Hyperborea, it feels like the region is hiding layers of history we still don't understand. Linnea might be one of the characters who helps us explore that history from a completely different angle. Instead of politics or warfare, her story is about identity, about species boundaries, about the question of what it means to belong somewhere. And if the concept of changelings becomes more important in Snezhnaya's storyline, it could even reveal hidden connections between humans, fae, and other forms of life across Teyvat. Which would make Linnea a lot more than just a quirky pink-haired adventurer. She might actually be one of the keys to understanding how many different kinds of life exist in this world, and where they came from. But for now, we still only have fragments of information. Linnea hasn't officially released yet, and a lot of the details we're discussing are still based on early character descriptions and rumors. So there's a good chance we'll learn much more once she finally arrives in the game. And honestly, I'm really curious to see how players react to her. Do you think Linnea will end up being a major lore character for Snezhnaya? Or do you think her story will stay more personal and philosophical? And maybe the biggest question of all, do you think she'll ever stop running away from machines? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I always love seeing the theories people come up with. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Genshin lore, character analysis, and upcoming content discussions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.